You are listening to Social Europe podcast. We discuss cutting-edge thinking on politics, economy, and employment and labour with some of the most thought-provoking people around, including Nobel Prize winners and other internationally acclaimed experts. So welcome and enjoy the conversation.
Hello and welcome to Social Europe podcast episode 26. My name is Henning, Meyer, editor-in-chief of Social Europe. Today I'm talking to László Andor, former EU Commissioner and leading Hungarian politician, about the state of affairs of the Hungarian Socialist Party. This episode is part of a series of SWOT analyses of progressive parties from across the world that Social Europe is running together with the Friedrich-Ebert-Stiftung. I hope you enjoy the conversation. So, Laszlo, thank you very much for being with us this morning to talk about the Hungarian Socialist Party. And, as a way of introduction for most people who might not be aware of the situation, particularly in Hungary, what would you say is the historic position of the Social Democratic Party in the political system, and where does it currently stand?
Yes, I think to analyze the Hungarian situation, we need to go back until 1989, because that's when the Hungarian Socialist Party, as we know it today, was launched. And also because this is one historical period, and in fact, most of the significant political players, including the current Prime Minister, Mr. Orban, started their political career. So this is one long period in which we define Hungarian politics from many angles. In the 1990s, I would say that the Hungarian Socialist Party was a leading party. And if you look at the electoral results, let's say in the first 15 years after the democratic period started, the Socialist Party had the best electoral results in Hungary, if you compare all the political parties. And absolutely counterintuitively, it started to crumble after joining the European Union. So the big expectation was that joining the European Union would also consolidate social democracy, partly because the EU provides a good pattern. In most EU countries, social democrats are in top 2 or top 3, and very often in power. And also because the EU provides the means. The EU provides the means to sustain a social market economy and a welfare state. It helps economic convergence. And why it turned out the opposite way? Number one, Hungary entered the EU with a very large legacy debt, and that caused a significant instability, which the socialist liberal government was just unable to manage in a consistent way. And in 2006, when all other economies in the region were booming, Hungary was implementing a stabilization program, and that started to create ambivalence inside, but also it started to alienate some of the base which the party had in the previous about 15 years. And then the socialist liberal government was caught up in the great financial crisis in 2008 and 9, which again, with external intervention from the IMF, put us on a track of a very harsh fiscal adjustment policy, which probably destroyed the remaining part of this previously existing broad support. So since about 2010, the socialists have been in opposition. and never really managing to go beyond the core support. There is certainly a core, which is for sociological, ideological, or various other reasons strongly attached to the center-left and specifically the Socialist Party. But this is an aging sociological group. These values do not really transfer to the young generation, and any kind of reconstruction on the center-left turned out to be very difficult and very temporary.
And if you come to the core of the SWOT analysis, where would you say, as we stand currently, where are the strengths and where are the weaknesses of the party?
Yes, well, it's not easy to define, because I could speak about a lot of threats and weaknesses, and it's very difficult to find where the strengths really lies. In the 1990s, it was quite clear. Because in the 90s, when the Socialists won the election in 94 and still remained the strongest single party in 98, but because of a right-wing coalition, they lost power, it was clear that the technocratic capacity was seen as a major strength. There were many new players in Hungarian politics. In the center and the center-right at that time. But since a lot of people in the center and center-right newly came to politics, they often were seen as incompetent. And socialists, although some of them having the baggage of being politically active before 89, simply because of the technocratic experience, were seen as dominant, as almost a kind of natural party of government, and this technocratic charisma through various cycles of misfortune since EU membership has significantly weakened. I think it's not an issue anymore. It doesn't exist really. I mean, I think it exists to some extent in reality, but the perception is gone that the Socialist Party would be, for whatever reason, superior in terms of government capacity, and at the same time, the organic links to the natural base, which would be employees, especially organized in trade unions, retired workers, student movements. All these have been pretty much weakened. The youth was always a problem, I would say, since the very start. The youth in Hungary was in the beginning inclined to liberal parties, and later the youth was mainly inclined towards nationalism, and occasionally the far-right nationalism. So the base for the Socialist Party was largely active employees and for a very long period pensioners. And I think it's primarily since the time of the fiscal adjustment when this strong base among pensioners has been lost. The Fidesz clearly is dominant among pensioners, and I mean, to some extent, it's still the working population, especially organized labor, public sector employees like teachers, for example, might be considered where the Socialist Party has a greater influence. Also, it's a bit regional issue. There are some regions where traditionally the Socialist Party has been relatively strong and maintains it, but this is again a major issue. I would say there is some strength if you want it, in a SWOT analysis in Budapest and some of the more traditional left-wing cities like Miskolc or Salgótarján or Pécs. But we have also seen that in some of these cities it has been difficult to preserve power in municipal government. We have very few cases, like Laszlo who is now the prime minister candidate of the Socialist Party, that someone for a relatively long period managed to maintain municipal leadership in a significant city, which is, in his case, the city of Szeged.
Okay, and so there are regional disparities where, you can make a distinction between strengths and weaknesses. And, obviously, against the backdrop of the specific Hungarian situation with Orban and the way he has transformed his rule, where do you see the opportunities and threats going forward?
The threats, I think the Hungarian case is in a way specific, because the main threat for the Hungarian left, but Hungary in general, is the authoritarian tendency of Viktor Orban and his political party. At the beginning, after they took over in 2010, this was not such a manifest trend, but step by step, I think it became clear that there are, in the absence of internal and external constraints, they just go forward and forward towards a regime where they cannot be replaced, and the concentration of power, the lack of checks and balances. The fact that the party in government can just change the rules and shift the resources anytime, of course, makes life difficult, if not impossible, for the parties of the opposition. Now, there is also a difficulty. This is not really a threat, but let's say a difficulty, a weakness, which is linked to social democracy in Europe in general. There is a lack of orientation in social democracy in general. I would say that 10, 15 years ago, there was a clear ideological orientation of the Hungarian Socialist Party, which was a focus on Blairism and the Blairite version of the progressive political family. And after the years which I described, 2006 to 10, this shine of Blairism was lost, not only in the UK but also in Hungary, and the subsequent leaders of the party, in various ways, try to distance themselves from, let's say, a neoliberal version of social democracy, but without the capacity to give or define a very clear direction. What we are experiencing now, since January, is another attempt in this fashion, right, to redefine social democracy, but in the absence of a very clear model which could be in a way followed or imported. This is not such an easy effort in Hungary.
And if you look internationally again, do you see any parties that could be like role models? I mean, you mentioned that the Labour Party in the 90s was the role model for a lot of social democratic parties. Do you see anywhere in Europe or beyond a model evolving that could provide some orientation?
Yes, I think from the angle of Hungary, it's not that hard to detect center-left parties which are more successful. They might be either in government or have a strong position in opposition and waiting for victory. And these are primarily two types of parties. One, which is the party of Robert Fico, our neighbor in the north, which is more nationalistic. So if you compare the Hungarian socialists and the Slovak socialists, the Slovaks are clearly a lot more nationalistic. And whether voluntarily or make compromise, whatever, but there is clearly more open nationalism. And of course, it's in many ways not something that would be attractive. But you have to recognize that they're quite successful. And the other version, which you can see in Portugal, you can see now in the UK, I would also say Sweden, where social democracy is more characteristically left-wing and tries to rekindle some features of the classic social democratic program, which is the importance of public ownership, the importance of a strong welfare state, an explicit fight against inequality, income inequality, but also inequality of wealth, and a focus on the fight against poverty as well. So these are, in my view, the clear models. And where we have seen the meltdown of social democrats from the Netherlands to Greece, it has been largely explained by a too strong attachment to economic policies, especially macroeconomic policies, which have no real connection with social democracy and do not connect with values or principles of this tendency.
I mean, all over the place, social democratic parties have trouble connecting with its core constituency, and even, because of also the societal changes, it might be not as straightforward as it might have used to be to define what the core constituency actually is. I mean, in previous discussions on this project, interview partners identified the shift away from socioeconomic policies towards identity politics as one of the contributing factors to a growing disconnect. So without sort of chucking away the liberties that were fought for, but can you also identify a shift back to a classic socioeconomic political arena that maybe was neglected in recent years because the focus shifted more towards identity politics?
In the Hungarian context?
In general terms.
Well, in general, I would say that, of course, there might be confusion and ambiguity in the situation, but intellectually, I wouldn't say that it's as hard as you described. I mean, Greece, if you remember the time of Papandreou, the party of Papandreou knew quite well that austerity is not a social democratic policy, but the country was suffocated, and they were forced into that direction, which was not the case in the Netherlands. And the Dutch social democrats, they chose this direction. Nobody forced the Dutch to that direction, and especially to play a leading role through Jeroen Dijsselbloem in this type of economic policy making in Europe. So that's, I would say, an important dimension, which we haven't discussed so far, the role the European Union plays in all this, and the lack of a strong social democratic voice and explicit pursuit of an alternative model at the European level. I would say this is probably a critical issue for many parties today. If the Social Democrats are seen as defenders of a status quo, defenders of a model which was not created by them, then of course people in increasing numbers will ask the question why we should vote for them, what they represent at the EU level.
So you basically, if I got you right, you see that trying to influence European level politics and trying to change the way politics is being formulated at the EU level is an absolutely necessary complementary part to reconfiguring national social democratic politics.
Yes, in some areas this is well understood. In other areas it isn't. I give you an example where I think it is well understood. All the discussion on social dumping, for example, comes from the recognition that the EU, because it's a single market, brings not only opportunities but also limitations to national welfare states and labor regulation, and the protection of the workforce and social rights within countries. But this needs to be compensated by EU-level action, either legislation or financial instruments or policy coordination, but some form of EU policy needs to supplement and protect the national welfare systems. And I would say that this approach or program of social democracy has been in existence, but very narrow in the recent years, especially if you look at discussions in the European Parliament. Very focused debates on social dumping, but only very general pursuit of an investment agenda, for example, which allowed the current Commission to get away with an investment plan whose additionality is in doubt, and the added value is in doubt. So it's for several years now, the perception of the public, including supporters of the centre-left, is that there's been a kind of grand coalition, centre-left, centre-right, jointly governing Europe. But the centre-left components of this agenda, in many cases, either vague or nominal or delayed.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and finishing off again with the Hungarian case. I mean, what would be your best recommendation for how to develop the party in the specific and very difficult context of Hungarian politics?
Well, I think a critical issue in the recent period has been, as I described, since 2004, how the country finds its place in the European Union, and whether the EU membership and its various facets help the pursuit of a social democratic agenda. And the cohesion policy was supposed to play a major role in that, and that also went utterly wrong in the Hungarian context, in the first period because of inexperience, and in the second period since Fidesz is in power because of the EU funds being integrated in a political food chain of the centre-right. So obviously, in order to regain not only a support for social democracy, but also a joint support for the EU project and social democracy, you need to be able to redefine what cohesion policy is for. Because if it's not possible, then the components of these programs fall apart. So this is exactly because of the deepening of internal territorial imbalances, an absolutely critical question for the socialists to regain support in rural areas. Now the party is more or less withdrawn to towns and especially the larger cities, right? And of course, with such a geography, you cannot become a dominant party again. So this is one very important issue. The second issue is the question of youth. I think this is perhaps slightly easier because I think more and more young people understand that the policies of the right in Hungary are not about creating opportunities for the young people from the reorganization of the gymnasium to the internet use. In a variety of ways. Fidesz has just undermined the opportunities of the youth, and that's why so high share of the Hungarian pupils and students want to go to other countries, especially in Western Europe, and also the young employees want to leave the country. This is, I think, something which is inviting a strong social democratic program. Schooling, training, universities, and the opportunities for young people in the world of work. This needs to be a complex program. I don't think it's impossible. The problem comes with the fact that most of the people who would benefit from a stronger social democratic program supporting education and youth, they are already outside the country or they are soon leaving. And then the Hungarian electoral law practically doesn't allow you to vote if you do not reside in the country. There are about 200,000 Hungarians in the UK. And they left because they didn't like the situation at home. But they cannot vote in mail. They can only vote if on the day of voting they go to London and visit the Hungarian embassy. So 200,000 people are supposed to vote at the Hungarian embassy in London. Even if they work in Manchester or Glasgow or anywhere. So obviously Orban did his best to disenfranchise these people who dare to move out of the country to work, while at the same time he gave the franchise to ethnic Hungarians living in surrounding countries, and they can vote in mail. Even if they don't have a residence in Hungary. So the electoral system also has been, in a way, manipulated in order to reflect these conditions.
Okay, well, certainly very challenging circumstances in the case of Hungary. László Andor, thank you very much for this conversation, and I hope with this project we can contribute to generating some new ideas that might be helpful in different European countries. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you don't miss future episodes by subscribing to Social Europe Podcast. You can also read our articles on www.socialeurope.eu and follow us on Facebook and on Twitter @Social Europe. Until next time.